October 2004. A cold morning in Los Angeles. The set of Million Dollar Baby was buzzing with the controlled chaos of a major production. Cameras being positioned, lights being adjusted, extras being shuffled into place for a boxing gym scene that would take most of the day to shoot. Clint Eastwood stood near the monitor, watching everything with those pale eyes that missed nothing. He was 74 years old, directing and starring in a film that nobody expected much from. A story about a female boxer and her reluctant trainer. The studios had passed on it. The budget was tight. Most of Hollywood thought Clint was wasting his time on a small character drama when he could be making another blockbuster. But Clint didn't care what Hollywood thought. He never had. The scene they were setting up required about 40 extras to fill the boxing gym. Background players who would pretend to train, pretend to watch, pretend to be part of a world they were only visiting for a day. Most directors never even looked at extras. They were furniture, human props, names on a call sheet that nobody bothered to learn. Clint was different. He always had been. He noticed things other people missed. Details, moments, the small truths that made films feel real. That's why he saw her. She was sitting in the far corner of the gym set, behind a stack of equipment cases where nobody would notice her. An older woman, maybe 70, with silver hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She was wearing the costume they'd given her, a plain house dress that suggested she was supposed to be someone's mother or grandmother in the background of a shot. But she wasn't preparing for the scene. She wasn't chatting with other extras or checking her phone or doing any of the things background players normally did between setups. She was crying, not loudly, not dramatically. Just quiet tears running down weathered cheeks, shoulders trembling slightly, hands clasped in her lap like she was trying to hold herself together. Clint watched her for a moment. Around him, the crew kept working. The first AD was calling out instructions. The cinematographer was discussing a camera angle with his operator. Nobody else had noticed the old woman in the corner. Why would they? She was just an extra, invisible by definition. "Hold on," Clint said. The words weren't loud, but they carried. Everyone within earshot stopped what they were doing. When Clint Eastwood said, "Hold on," you held on. "Give me 5 minutes," he said to his AD. "Keep setting up. I'll be back." Then he walked away from the monitor, away from the cameras, away from the controlled chaos of a film set, and headed toward the corner where the old woman sat crying. The crew exchanged confused glances. This wasn't like Clint. He was famous for efficiency, for keeping things moving, for never wasting a minute of shooting time. What was he doing? The old woman didn't notice him approaching. Her eyes were closed now, tears still leaking from beneath the lids, her body curled in on itself like she was trying to disappear. "Ma'am?" Clint's voice was gentle, softer than the voice he used on screen, softer than most people ever heard. The woman's eyes snapped open. For a moment, she looked confused, disoriented. Then she realized who was standing in front of her, and her face went pale. "Mr. Eastwood, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll pull myself together. Please don't fire me. I need this job. I'm sorry." The words tumbled out in a rush of panic and embarrassment. She started wiping her face with her hands, trying to erase the evidence of her breakdown. Clint pulled up a folding chair and sat down across from her. Eye level, like they were two people having a conversation, not a legendary director and a nameless extra. "Nobody's firing anybody," he said. "What's your name?" Eleanor Brennan." "Eleanor?" Clint nodded. "You want to tell me what's wrong?" She stared at him like he'd asked her to explain quantum physics. You want to know what's wrong? With me?" "That's why I'm asking." "But we're supposed to be shooting. There are cameras waiting. I saw the schedule. The scene is supposed to—" "The scene can wait." Clint leaned back in his chair. "Cameras aren't going anywhere. Crew's not going anywhere. Right now, I'm asking you what's wrong. If you don't want to tell me, that's fine. But I've got time to listen if you want to talk." Eleanor Brennan looked at Clint Eastwood for a long moment. 74 years of hard living were written on her face. deep lines around her eyes, hands that had clearly done real work, not just posed for cameras. This was a woman who had survived things, endured things, carried weights that most people couldn't imagine. "My husband died 3 weeks ago," she finally said. "Cancer. Took 8 months from diagnosis to the end. I watched him disappear piece by piece until there was nothing left but a body that used to be the man I loved." Clint said nothing, just listened. "We were married 51 years, met when I was 18. He was 20. We grew up together, built a life together, raised 3 children, buried 1. Her voice cracked on that last part. Buried 1. 3 words that contained an entire universe of pain. After the funeral, I found out we were broke. The medical bills, they took everything. The house is mortgaged to the roof. There's nothing left. My son said I could move in with him, but his wife doesn't want me there. I can see it in her eyes. I'm a burden, an obligation, something to be managed, not loved." She wiped her eyes again. "I used to be an actress, a long time ago. Never made it big, but I worked. Television shows, commercials, small parts in films. I gave it up when the kids came. Harold wanted me home, and I wanted to be home. I never regretted it. Not once. But now I'm 70 years old with no money, no husband, no career, and a body that's falling apart. I registered with a casting agency last week because I didn't know what else to do. They sent me here, said it was an easy day's work, just sit in the background and pretend to watch boxing." She laughed bitterly. $150. That's what I'm getting paid today. And I was sitting here thinking that $150 might be the difference between making rent this month and not making it. 70 years old, and I'm counting dollars like a teenager. And then I couldn't hold it in anymore. All the grief, all the fear. It just came out. She looked at Clint with red, swollen eyes. "I'm sorry. You didn't need to hear all that. You have a movie to make. I'll be fine. I just need a minute." Clint didn't move, didn't get up, didn't tell her everything would be okay. He just sat there, absorbing her story, giving it the weight it deserved. "What was his name?" Clint asked. "Your husband." "Harold. Harold Brennan. He was a high school history teacher for 35 years. He loved the Civil War. Could talk about Gettysburg for hours if you let him. He used to say that history was just stories, and the best way to learn was to listen to the stories. Sounds like a good man." "The best man." Eleanor's voice broke again. "The very best man I ever knew. And now he's gone, and I don't know how to be a person without him. We were together so long I don't remember who I was before. Does that make sense?" "It makes perfect sense." They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the crew had mostly stopped working. People were watching now, curious about what was happening in the corner. Why was Clint Eastwood sitting with an extra? Why had he stopped production? What was going on? "Eleanor," Clint said finally, "I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me." "Okay." "How much do you need? To be stable? To not worry about rent or bills or whether you can afford groceries? What's the number?" Eleanor stared at him. "What?" "The number. How much would it take to get you on solid ground?" "Mr. Eastwood, you can't just... I'm not asking what you think is polite. I'm asking what you need." Eleanor's hands were shaking. "The mortgage is $40,000. Credit cards are maybe $15. Medical bills are, I don't even know. They keep sending letters. Maybe another $30,000. And then there's living expenses. I don't know. I haven't been able to think about it clearly. So roughly $100,000 would clear everything and give you breathing room." "Yes, probably. But Mr. Eastwood, you can't just give me money. I'm nobody. I'm just an extra. You don't even know me." Clint smiled slightly. That weathered face that had played 1,000 tough guys softened into something almost gentle. "I know you were married for 51 years to a man named Harold who loved the Civil War. I know you gave up your career to raise your children. I know you buried one of them. which is a pain I can't imagine. I know you're 70 years old and scared and grieving and still showing up to work because that's what survivors do. That's not nobody, Eleanor. That's somebody. That's a whole life." Eleanor started crying again, but different tears this time. Not despair, something else. "Here's what's going to happen," Clint said. "We're going to finish shooting this scene. You're going to sit in the background and watch some fake boxing, and when the day is over, you're going to give your contact information to my assistant. Tomorrow, someone from my office is going to call you and work out the details. The mortgage, the credit cards, the medical bills, all of it. I can't accept that. It's too much. You don't owe me anything. You're right. I don't owe you anything. But you know what I've learned in 50 years in this business? Money is just paper. It comes and goes. What matters is what you do with it. I've made more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And right now, I can use some of that money to make sure a 70-year-old widow doesn't lose her home 3 weeks after burying her husband. That seems like a pretty good use of paper to me." Eleanor was shaking her head, overwhelmed. "Why? Why would you do this for a stranger?" Clint was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, deeper, more personal. "Because my mother was a widow once. My father died when I was young. She worked herself to the bone to keep us fed, took jobs she hated, swallowed her pride 1,000 times, and nobody helped her. Nobody stopped to ask if she was okay. She survived because she was tough, but she shouldn't have had to be that tough. Nobody should." He looked at Eleanor with eyes that had seen everything. "I can't go back and help my mother, but I can help you. And maybe that's how it works. You can't fix the past, but you can fix the present. You can see someone struggling and choose to do something about it instead of looking the other way." The set had gone completely silent now. The crew, the other extras, everyone was watching. They couldn't hear the conversation, but they could see something important happening. Something real. Clint stood up and extended his hand to Eleanor. "Come on, we've got a scene to shoot, and I want you in the front row, not hiding in the corner. Let me see that face on camera." Eleanor took his hand and stood up. Her legs were unsteady, her eyes still wet, but there was something different in her posture now, something that hadn't been there before. Hope. The scene took 3 hours to shoot. Eleanor sat in the front row of the boxing gym set, exactly where Clint had placed her. She didn't have any lines. She didn't do anything except watch and react. But if you look closely at $1 Million Baby, in the gym scenes, you can see an older woman with silver hair whose eyes carry something real. Something that can't be faked. Because she wasn't acting. She was just being herself. A widow who had lost everything and found unexpected kindness on a film set in October 2004. After the scene wrapped, Clint's assistant approached Eleanor with a business card and a note with instructions. True to his word, someone from Clint's office called her the next day. Within a month, the mortgage was paid off. The credit cards were cleared, the medical bills disappeared, but Clint didn't stop there. When he found out that Eleanor had been an actress decades ago, he made some calls. He got her representation with a small agency that specialized in older character actors. He recommended her for a few projects. Nothing big, just small roles, a grandmother here, a neighbor there, enough to give her purpose, enough to make her feel like she mattered again. Over the next year, Eleanor Brennan worked more than she had in decades. She booked commercials. She got a recurring role on a television show as a hospital patient. She wasn't making millions, but she was making enough. More importantly, she was working. She was useful. She was alive in a way she hadn't felt since Harold died. She wrote Clint a letter 6 months after that day on set. He never forgot what it said. "Dear Mr. Eastwood, I've started this letter 100 times and thrown it away 100 times because I don't know how to say what I need to say. You saved my life. Not just financially, though, that would have been enough. You saved something deeper. You saw me when I was invisible. You stopped a $100 million production to sit with a crying old woman in a corner. You treated me like I mattered when I was convinced I didn't. Harold used to say that the measure of a person isn't what they do when people are watching. It's what they do when they think nobody's paying attention. By that measure, you're the best person I've ever met. I'm working again. Did you know that? Small parts, but real parts. Last week I played someone's grandmother in a commercial for life insurance. Harold would have laughed at the irony. I laughed too. First time I've laughed since he died. I don't know if I believe in God. Harold did. I never could quite get there. But I believe in people. I believe that sometimes when you're at your lowest, someone appears and does something kind for no reason except that kindness is possible. You were that person for me. I will never be able to repay you. But I can pass it on. Last week I saw a young woman crying at a bus stop. She looked about 20. I sat down next to her and asked if she wanted to talk. She did. Her boyfriend had left her. Her rent was due. She was scared and alone. I couldn't pay her rent. I don't have that kind of money. But I could listen. I could sit with her the way you sat with me. And when we parted, she hugged me and said I was the first person who had really listened to her in months. That's your legacy, Mr. Eastwood. Not the movies, not the awards. The ripples you create when you treat people like they matter. Those ripples spread further than you'll ever know. Thank you. From the bottom of my broken, healing, grateful heart. Eleanor Brennan. Clint kept that letter in his desk for years. He never showed it to anyone. Never talked about it publicly. It was private. Between him and Eleanor. Between him and the memory of his mother. Between him and whatever part of himself drove him to notice a crying woman in a corner when everyone else looked the other way. $1 Million Baby was released in December 2004. It won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. It made over $200 million worldwide. Critics called it one of the best films of the decade. At the Oscar ceremony, Clint gave the standard acceptance speeches. Thanked the studio. Thanked the cast. Thanked the crew. Said all the things you're supposed to say when you win the biggest award in your industry. But there was a moment nobody caught on camera. A moment after the ceremony, backstage, when Clint was surrounded by well-wishers and handlers and industry people wanting to shake his hand. An older woman with silver hair pushed through the crowd. Security tried to stop her, but Clint saw her and waved them off. Eleanor Brennan stood in front of him, tears streaming down her face. "You won," she said. "You actually won." Clint smiled. "We both did, Eleanor. We both did." They embraced. An Oscar-winning director and a 71-year-old widow who had been invisible until someone chose to see her. Surrounded by Hollywood's elite, by wealth and fame and power, they held on to each other like two survivors who understood something the glittering crowd never would. That kindness is the only thing that lasts. That seeing people, really seeing them, matters more than any award or accolade. That a $100 million production can wait while you sit with someone who needs to be heard. Eleanor Brennan passed away in 2012. She was 78 years old. She had worked steadily as an actress for the last 8 years of her life, booking small roles that kept her busy and fulfilled and connected to the world. Clint attended her funeral. It was a small service, just family and a few friends from the industry she had found late in life. He sat in the back, didn't speak to the press, didn't make a statement, just paid his respects to a woman who had taught him something important about the power of a single moment. Her son approached him afterward. "Mr. Eastwood, I don't know if you remember me. I'm Thomas, Eleanor's son." "I remember." "She talked about you all the time. Every day. She said you saved her life." Clint shook his head. "She saved herself. I just gave her a hand up. That's not how she saw it." Thomas's voice was thick with emotion. "She said you were proof that good people exist, that when she was at her lowest, someone saw her. She spent the last 8 years of her life trying to be that person for others, because of you." Clint didn't know what to say, so he said the only thing that felt true. "Your mother was a remarkable woman. I'm honored that I got to know her." They shook hands. Clint left the funeral and drove home alone, thinking about Eleanor, about his own mother, about all the invisible people sitting in corners waiting to be seen. That's the story of what happened on the set of $1 Million Baby. Not the story of the film itself, not the story of the Oscars or the box office or the critical acclaim. The other story, the one about a crying extra and a director who stopped everything to ask what was wrong. Clint Eastwood has directed over 40 films. He's won 4 Academy Awards. He's made billions of dollars at the box office. He's one of the most respected filmmakers in Hollywood history. But if you asked him about his proudest moment, he wouldn't talk about Unforgiven. He wouldn't talk about $1 Million Baby. He wouldn't talk about any of the films that made him famous. He'd talk about a cold morning in October 2004 when he saw an old woman crying in a corner and decided to do something about it. Because that's who Clint Eastwood really is. Not the tough guy, not the legend, not the icon, just a man who pays attention, who sees people when they're invisible, who understands that sometimes the most important thing you can do isn't make a movie. It's stop making the movie and ask someone if they're okay. That's the lesson. That's the legacy. That's what matters more than any Oscar or any box office record or any amount of fame. Seeing people, hearing them, helping when you can. The rest is just movies.